Okay, so yesterday we talked about the domain and the range. So the domain was what you put in, the range is what you get out. There's also what's called the codomain, and the codomain is all the possible outputs. Okay, so not necessarily the outputs, but if it's possible to have them as an output, right? For example, take the function. So we have 1 going to 4, we have 2 going to 4, we have 3 going to 6. So the domain is what we put in, which is 1, 2, 3. The range is what we get out. We only got out a 4 and a 6. But the codomain is all the possibilities we could have got out. So while we only got out a 4 and a 6, we could have got a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's called the codomain, right? So all the possible outputs, okay, not the actual outputs, right? A second example of that there, girls. Write down the domain, range and codomain are the following function, right? So we have 4 going to 3, 7 going to 3, 8 going to 5, and there's a 9 and a 10 over here. So the domain is what we put in. So we put in a 4, a 7 and an 8. The range is what we got out. Sorry, there's a flare on that. We got out a 3 and a 5, right? Okay, and then the codomain is what we could have got out. So we could have got out a 3, a 5, a 9 and a 10. Okay, I'm going to pause to write it down. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is operations involving functions. Okay, so just first off, how you might see functions written. Okay, a function can be written as, so it just say 3x minus 2 is a function. They'll write f of x equals 3x minus 2. Sometimes they mightn't have any brackets and they'll use a colon instead. So f of x, instead of an equals, they might use an arrow. It all means the same thing, 3x minus 2. Sometimes they call it y equals 3x minus 2. So please note that y and f of x are the exact same thing. So you can replace f of x with y anytime you see it. Okay? So example 1, right, okay, given that f of x is equal to 2x plus 1 and g of x equals 1 minus 3x. Now the next bit is on the next slide. So if you want to pause here to write this down, and I'll get the rest of example 1 then. Right? So the rest of example 1. So they tell me what f of x is and they tell me what g of x is. Right? And they ask me to find f of 2, g of minus 1, f of k, right? G of 2k and f of k plus 1. Now I just rewrote them here again because they're on the other slide. So part 1 is find f of 2. So f of 2 means into f, which is this rule here, everywhere I see an x, put in a 2. So instead of the x, we put in a 2. So it's 2 times 2 plus 1, 2 times 2 plus 1 into the calculator. With that, your answer is 5. Okay? Part 2 then says, get g of minus 1. So it's g of minus 1. So this time, into g, everywhere you see an x, put a minus 1. So this is g here, 1 minus 3x. So you're going to replace that x with a minus 1. So it's 1 minus 3 times minus 1 into the calculator with that and press equals and you'll get 4. Okay. Part 3 asks me to get f of k. So it's normally f of a number, but it doesn't matter. Into f, instead of x, write k. Right? So into f, instead of x, write k. Here, instead of x, we wrote 2. Here, instead of x, we wrote minus 1. Here, it's just we're writing a letter instead of a number. So instead of that x, so it's 2x plus 1, but I'm writing k instead of x. So the answer is 2k plus 1. Okay? Part 3 asks me for, sorry, I'm on part 4, aren't I? Part 4 asks me for g of 2k. So that means into g, everywhere I see an x, put a 2k. So here's my g. Instead of that x, I'm writing 2k. So it's 1 minus 3 times, instead of x, I'm writing 2k. So that would be 1 minus 3 by 2k is 6k. Okay, and that's your answer there. And part 5 then says get f of k plus 1. So that means into f, instead of x, write k plus 1. So into f, instead of x, write k plus 1. So here's f. Instead of that x, I'm writing k plus 1. So it was 2x. Now it's 2 times k plus 1 plus 1. So multiplying that out, multiplying into that bracket, 2 by k is 2k, 2 by 1 is 2, right? And then you have a plus 1. So then you can put the numbers together. So that is 2k, and 2 and 1 makes 3. Okay. If you want to pause and write down that slide. Okay, example 2 is next. Example 2 is here, right? So I have given f of x is x squared plus 1, g of x is 1 minus 2x squared, and h of x, just the third one, 3x plus 1. And it's find f of minus 1. So part 1 is find f of minus 1. So that means into f, everywhere I see an x, put in a minus 1. So that would be minus 1 squared plus 1. Into the calculator with that, and that will give me 2. Okay, part 2 asks me for h of k plus 1. So that just means into h, everywhere I see an x, put in a k plus 1. So k is here, so it's 3 times k plus 1 plus, 3 times k plus 1 plus 1, and then multiply out, that would be 3k plus 3 plus 1, which would be 3k plus 4. Okay, and then the last one of that is sorry, you might want to pause and write that down. Right, and then the last part of that question is find g of 2k, part 3, there's 2 more parts, right? So the next one is find g of 2k. So that means into g, everywhere I see an x, put in a 2k. So here's g, it's 1 minus 2x squared. So instead of that x squared, I'm writing a 2k. Instead of that x, I'm writing a 2k. So it's 1 minus 2k to be squared, right? So that's 1 minus 2 times 2k to be squared. Square the 2, you get 4. Square k, you get k squared. So that would be 1 minus 8k squared. Okay, and that's the answer to that bit. And then part 4 tells me f of x equals 10. Right, now this one is slightly different, because they're not telling me what to put in, they're telling me what the answer was. Okay, so they're basically saying into f, which is x squared plus 1, right? Into f, I basically put in something for x, I don't know what, but I know my answer was 10. So basically x squared plus 1, right? So I am x squared plus 1 is f of x. So I put in something for that x, and my answer was 10. Okay, so then you're solving. So that would be x squared is equal to 10 minus 1 when it comes across. that means x squared is equal to 9. So what squared will give you 9? It can be 3, or girls, it could have been a minus 3 as well, because minus 3 squared will also give you 9. Okay? And then finally, example 3, you want to pause and write this down. Example 3, so if f of x is 3x minus 4, for what value of k is f of k plus f of 2k equals 0? Okay, so the first bit is you have to do f of k. So to get f of k, instead of x, put in a k. So that would be 3, instead of 3x minus 4, it's now 3k minus 4. So that's that bit. Then I have a plus sign. Then I have to get f of 2k. f of 2k means instead of that x, put in a 2k. So it's 3 times 2k plus 4, and that equals 0. And then you multiply out and put your numbers on one side and your k's on one side and your numbers on the other. So you get 3k minus 4 plus 6k plus 4. Sorry, that should be a minus 4, shouldn't it? Minus 4 equals 0. So then k's on one side, numbers on the other. 3k stays put. Minus 4 moves. Plus 6k stays put. That minus 4 also moves. This minus 4 comes over and becomes a plus 4. This minus 4 comes over and becomes a plus 4. So I'll get 9k equals 8. There's a 9 stuck to that k, so divide each side by 9. And you'll end up with k is equal to 8 over 9. Okay, so that's it for today. So between now and tomorrow, you will do page 1, 4, 6, 1 to 6, and 9. Okay.